Okay, let's see. There should be sound, and we should have a camera. Look at that. Is it awfully dark? Not really. It's all right. Hello, and welcome to the 26th 52 Minutes live stream. Hi, I'm Alex. How are you doing? Hello, Pedro. Good to see you. I've not seen you in a while, have I? I think I might have, but I'm not sure. How are you doing? I'm starting a bit early, but it's just because well, it's a big board, and time is... Sorry, I'm just going to make some noise. It's my new theme for live streams. Guess the noise. It's a Sunday evening. Stockholm is snowy. Hello, Mr. Pendrag. How are you doing? Pedro's not been absent, just lurking. It's good. Lurking's fine. Is the image very dark, or is it all right? Taking a master's, Pedro. So that means like going to school and stuff, yeah? That's all right. I've just been away for a week in the south of Sweden, working with some filming and photography. And I've had a cold while I've been doing it, which has been not much fun. As you can hear, I'm a bit, Larson says the fantastic, sorry, trying to read Swedish and speak English is a mind boggler. The fantastic slask, which is what we call the mush, which, when snow mixes with salt and sand, and it kind of melts a little bit, and then it kind of freezes a little bit, and it turns into this brown slushy that you mustn't eat, but you can look at it. Just keep the spoon away, and it's kind of difficult to get through the streets sometimes just because of all the slusk. Good morning, Marcus Stratus. I hope you're having a lovely morning. That's right, it's your morning, isn't it? It's 5:30 in the afternoon over here. Good morning, Shrek. I hope you're having a lovely weekend too. It's been quite some time since I live streamed, which is just the way of things. Sometimes when you do these ventures into YouTube, it's like when you're spending all your free time doing it, and after a while you kind of go like, well, maybe I'd like some free time every now and again, go meet someone or do the washing or clean the house. And so then time management happened, and I haven't live streamed because it's always like weekends in the evening is like the best time to live stream to reach as many of you. But I'm back, and I hope to be back more often. Hello, Mark from Montana. I hope you're doing well. Greetings, Chris. The exposure is a bit dark. It is, isn't it? It kind of looks a bit dark. I'm gonna go tickle a camera. Not much, but a little bit better. Marcus says, I've had a frog in my throat multiple times this fall. Yeah. It's just kind of going rampant right now over here. I think there's quite a lot of COVID involved as well. So people are like sick everywhere, but just like regular colds or flus and stuff like that. Do you think my camera likes wood dust? Think my computer likes wood dust? I don't know. Very cool. Hello, live stream while painting. First time I managed to do it live. Well, welcome. It's always nice to have a bit of company when you're doing your hobby time. I used to in the past mainly just have like, I just sit and talk like this. I don't really do too many things, but I think if I'm going to live stream, I kind of want to be able to do something at the same time, both for your pleasure and mine. And so today I'm hoping to fiddle some more with my rather large project, which is going ahead, but a bit slow. As I said, I've been away for a week, so that's sort of pushed everything back a week. And but I've also entered the kind of fixing all the little things stage that looks really boring on YouTube, but needs to get done, but will probably just end up being like a minute in a video sped up, where it's like filling in all the little like cracks. And I can talk more about it later, but it's a lot of like fiddly work that doesn't look very exciting. It's not like this big creative, I'm just going to build this. And so I've been working and working and working and working my way through all these little things that are hardly visible, which is a bit boring, but there we are. Hello, Jamie. I hope you're doing well. Shrek says, I'm still working on Bronze Age Caveman. I'm having trouble with Blender showing my computer to a crawl. Yeah. I guess working with 3D is it'll do that to a computer. It's kind of frustrating, I guess, when you want to see a result, when you just want to see, what does this look like? And it's like, rendering, come back in 26 hours. It's kind of like trying to do a filament 3D print. Hello, loosely collected. I hope you've gathered yourself. Shrek says, neither likes wood dust. No, you're quite right. I think I'll be doing the scraping under the table. It'll look like I'm doing something suspect during a live stream, which is fine. I'm just, and it involves a, what do you call these? Wire brush? I don't know. It's a bit hardcore, right? Hello, Wolvencraft. I hope you're doing well. You're already done your table, haven't you? I believe Wolvencraft built a gaming table recently. I watched the video, I believe. Mine's in bits, and I'm scraping popsicle sticks. Loosely collected says, big amazing projects are generally made of a lot of boring, fiddly, ugly little parts that take a lot of time to do. Yeah. And I'm the kind of person that enjoys sitting to do them. It's just when you have, I get these, it's probably the same with most projects and for most people, but you have this idea in your head. So your idea is, I'm going to build a 6x4 foot gaming table. This is like step one for the brain. The next step is like, it's just going to have some trenches and like a mountain. And then I'm just going to add that thing. And then I'm just going to put some rocks on it. And then I'm just going to do the textures. And then I'm just going to paint it. And in the span of about 25 minutes, you've already finished the project in your head. And then when you've spent like a week putting texture paste everywhere on your board to cover like joints and edges and little pieces of aluminium foil in your corkbark holes because you can fit corkbark in there, and all these little tiny things that no one's ever going to see, but you just have to do them because otherwise they bother you the rest of your life, or at least the 3 times you're ever going to use the gaming table. And yeah, seriously, the week before last, I was working on this table every day, and I'm looking at it now, and it's like it's not like nothing's happened. It's not. It doesn't look different. It's just it'll look better in the end, but yeah, it's still fun. Hello, Alison. I hope you're doing well. Chris says, I'm unsure if you've shared already, but with which nation forces are you thinking of building an army for? I just received my copy of A War Transformed. I'm learning towards a French force. It's a good question. So for those of you who are watching this stream and had, you don't know too much about the game that Chris is talking about, the book is probably around here somewhere. I could get it, but I won't right now. It's what inspired me is a game called A War Transformed, which is sort of alternative World War I warfare. And so you can play different factions, which is different countries. So you can be British or French, Russian, there's all these, American. And there's always standard troops you can have in every army, but then there's a lot of specialist sort of elements or forces that you can put into your army depending on what faction you play. And they're quite different. And, obviously it's like if you play Russians, you can have like almost peasant style forces. And they're like massive units of not very elites. And this and that. The French, I believe, have a lot of vehicles, tanks and such. To answer your question, Chris, I haven't really considered. I think maybe British, just because it'll spark my little sort of nostalgic thing of British World War I style soldiers in trenches. But I'm not sure. Probably British. I mean, ideally, I'd like to do 2 forces so that I can play this game with other people. And I don't know how much I'm gonna, I kind of also want to use models or sculpts that maybe aren't accessibly, visibly from a specific country, not as historically correct. But also the French look fun because there's so many vehicles. So I'm a bit, I'm not sure. Good morning, Eric. It's kind of cold over here as well. It's a bit better. It was like minus 12, 13 Celsius when I left Stockholm a week ago. And then I traveled to the south of Sweden, which was warmer. Now I'm back and it's kind of the same here. It's just around 0 degrees. So it kind of snows and kind of melts and kind of freezes. And yeah. M. Larsen says, looking at the previous videos that I really enjoyed, by the way, I kind of had the feeling it lacked height. By that, I mean both playable and non-playable. Maybe you have a complete plan already. I agree. I think I made a bit of a mistake there, and I'm going to look at it when I get, because this right now I'm fixing the fiddly details on one half of the board. Then I'm going to move over to the other half of the board. The thing is, when we sketched this out, we had like, maybe this should be a hill or a bunker. And I was like, cool. And I built bunkers. The problem with the bunkers is that they're sunk, they're in the ground. And so it's not an elevated hill. I think maybe I should have done a bunker and then maybe like a hill with a some kind of battlement or something on there, so that I had other elevated elements that are as high up as this hill, which I don't. The ship that eventually will be built will be elevated as much as that hill, but I need to kind of fit one or two more of that kind of areas in. The problem is I've already filled the board up, but it is XPS foam, so I can always just cut it down and glue something new on there. But I agree. I think I need at least another sort of height element as high as this one, just not as big, somewhere else on the board, just to make sort of line of sight. And parking a tank on one side of the board, you shouldn't be able to just freely shoot all the way over to the other one. So it's so far, I totally agree. And I just got carried away with the bunkers, I think, because it looked so cool, and I didn't actually stop and think that, well, maybe I should have put this bunker on a hill, Wolvencraft says, yes, 1 down, 3 more planned. Okay. Well, when I've done 3 more tables, I can probably retire because I'll be an old man. Maybe I won't be able to retire because, of money, but I'll be an old man at least. It's great to see you all, by the way. I've missed live streaming. I'm actually really happy. I just sound a bit grumpy because of the cold, Shrek says, I put all my gaming stuff in the basement. I replaced painting minis with writing, illustrating, narrating, and uploading screenplays, which sounds cool. I think misconception of having a hobby is that you really need to stick to it constantly. You can, do different things and then come back and do some mini painting every now and again. And sometimes it's just nice to have the one hobby because it's the only one you like. But it's great to just do different things in life, I believe. Hello, Ryan. Hello, Halika. How are you doing? I hope you're well. Loosely Collected says, I built a gaming table several years ago, but I've been building modular tile boards to use on it over the last years. It's time consuming, but when it comes into focus, it's so satisfying. Yes. I mean, I talked about that in the video, and modularity is a lot more flexible. I'm just excessively interested in doing like one big diorama that, where I can just hide all the things that you can't really hide with things that are modular. I know there's lots of ways to make a modular board look good as well, but just the sort of the flat spaces where maybe you have, not so much on there, so you can put other things on there, and the straight edges that should maybe connect, and all of this. It's just great fun to just commit to this one setting. I think if I, in the future would build another board for something, I'd probably just try the modular way, just so that I've tried that as well. Hello, Martin from Hungary. I hope you're well. And Juicy Milk. Shrek says, how many models would make up an army? It depends on what faction you play. As I said, it's like it's like in many war games where some armies can be more elite, or if you take a lot of tanks, obviously you won't have as many troops and such. Also, the lists themselves are, I guess, interesting. I mean, obviously you can do exactly however you want, which is, you can do that with any games. It's just that some games encourage it more than others. But if one looks at the different scenarios to play in the book for A War Transformed, it's like the different scenarios have different points. Most of them have different points. And so you're not looking at sort of building a set army that you play with in every game. It might be that, this scenario allows for like 20 or 30 little men, and the next one allows for 40 or 50 little men, and so on and so forth. And I thought that was kind of fun as well, because it's not. I very much got stuck in that with Age of Sigmar, where you're trying to like build the one great army or the one list that you'll enjoy playing. And imagine if you play like Warhammer or Age of Sigmar, and it's like, well, today we're playing a 650 point game, and next time we meet, we'll play a 250 point game, and the time after that, we'll play a 2,892 point game or whatever. All depending on the scenario. I thought that was a fun little twist, getting away a little bit from traditional sort of building the ultimate list building. Hello, Caffeinated Miniatures. I hope you're doing well. Chris says the French do get a very mechanized army. FT-70s, command tanks, and bigger tanks as well. Yes, I believe they are the ones with the most tanks. They also had the coolest tanks at the time, I believe. So it's a good choice. Mikami says, how does a live stream look this cinematic? Because all the other ones ain't doing their job properly. Just kidding. I don't know. I just can't not make sure it looks kind of nice. It's just the way of things. Okay, that didn't turn out the way I wanted. I'm making little planks here from ice cream sticks. I think I can do this, right? See, that was terribly dark as well. I should get on a ladder and try and fix that, which is annoying. Anyway, hi, I'm over here. So I've got a trench here. I'm gonna move and make this a bit brighter in a bit. I just can't get up at the moment. And this 3D printed trench system has wooden sticks going here. You can't see them because it's dark, but I'll fix it. Kind of like this. And I just glued them on top of the XPS, which means there's like a gap. So I need to fill this gap up a little bit with some texture paste and stuff like that. But I'm also wanting to fill it with some more sort of planks to match this. So at the moment, I'm making lots and lots of little planks. Okay, now you can watch me try and get up on a ladder. Or can I? Wait. Can I just fiddle this thing? Look, I can. See? Marvelous. So these are the planks. Now you can see the planks. I'm going to put some kind of paste in here and then put some planks on, just to get the elevation up a bit and just not to get this edge running, which means I need to make lots of little planks. That's what I'm doing at the moment. What are you guys doing at the moment? You're like hobbying, I hope. Okay, the chat jumped. I'm slow. As always, slow in the chat. Hello, James Jermenko. How you doing? Paolo, salute to you too. Juicy Milk says, you don't sound grumpy. I generally love listening to your calm and soothing voice. That's good. I kind of sometimes get the idea strikes me anyway. I'm not always as just generally happy as many of my fellow YouTubers who are like really happy people all the time. I'm happy too. I'm just happy on the inside and grumpy on the outside, which is fine. Hello, Jack Fletcher from Vancouver. I hope you're getting some hobbying done as well. The Fox Mask says, "Hey Alex, did you get my email about Bastrox? I'm sure you have a lot. Just wanted to make sure it's not in spam." I think I did, but I'm not. Honestly, this last week I haven't been checking emails as much because I've been stuck in what's called the black box, which is usually when you work with theater and stuff like that, when you're rehearsing and doing stuff, you're in a room that is completely black, and they're called black boxes. So I wasn't actually in a black box because that would probably, after a week, have been kind of frustrating. But I think I did get your email. Sometimes I'm also a bit sort of, which is not trying to sound rude, but I do get a lot of emails. And sometimes it's like, okay, so I have a couple of emails from patrons and stuff, and so I just prioritize them. And then I forget that I've been prioritizing, and emails end up not being read or answered. But I'll see what my inbox says. Justin says, for something that large, would rattle can or airbrush be more useful? You mean when I'm going to get into painting this thing? I haven't quite decided on the best approach. So obviously, rattle can would be a suitable way of just covering paint on there, like priming. There's obviously some issues when working with XPS, which is if you have regular rattle can, I'm not going to get them, but just regular spray, it melts XPS. So if I spray with a regular rattle can straight onto this XPS, it'll start to sort of melt. That can be avoided by covering the foam with a protection layer of something like Mod Podge or white glue or whatever. Or you can use, I believe I did a test, at least I think Army Painter does a spray that you can spray directly on XPS. But there's a company called Montana that does spray cans. Okay. They look kind of like this. This is their regular. This is Montana Gold. It says gold on there. This is like regular spray. This is great for miniatures, by the way, as well. Is less than half the price than like a Games Workshop rattle can. They make a water-based spray. I have a bottle somewhere of that as well, but I'm not going to try and get that out. I tried to spray that on a piece of XPS and nothing got melted. So that's an option. But on the other hand, I kind of want to protect this XPS with something like Mod Podge just for durability reasons. And in that case, I could as well just mix regular paint mixed up with Mod Podge and like brush it on. And then I have a covering layer of like, I could use a brown and I could mix in some greens and some grays and whatever and just sort of wet blend around and get a protecting layer with Mod Podge that is colored. But I don't know. I'm definitely going to use the airbrush because painting this is going to be a ton of work. I'm definitely going to use the airbrush, probably for most of it, once I get a covering layer of something else on there, if that is with a rattle can or whatever. But then to build up details and like volume, I'll definitely use airbrush. If that airbrush comes after like a massive dry brush, I don't know. I haven't really decided on what route to take. I mean, there's also the obvious thing that is it's just a big area, and using, you know, say I would use contrast paint on this, it would just be very expensive because I would probably use quite a lot of paint. So I'm also looking into using cheaper paint, but also using as a in a privileged position of people kind of sometimes sending me samples, trying out paint ranges, stuff like that. I do have quite a lot of paint that I don't use, which is just lying around, and so I might just use that. You know, we'll see. But that didn't really answer your question. Definitely, rattle can is a good way of just getting paint on there. Different colors, using some browns, some earth kind of colors, using some grays on the hill, just so that there is a nice covering layer, and then one can go in and work on the details that one feels are necessary to work on. I kind of also have a plan to use maybe use oil paint, oil washes, use pigments, pigment powders, whatever. We'll see. Still cutting little pieces of wood to make little tiny planks, Eric says, could War Transform be played 54 millimeter 1/35th scale? I mean, if you have it in your head to just scale everything up, you could change it to anything. You probably need to change, movement, so that if the model is slightly larger, then maybe all the movement should be slightly longer. Maybe people should shoot longer, further. I don't know. Or you just play with larger models and not really care. There are specifics about base sizes, which also isn't necessarily something you need to be specific about. I've been paying attention to that because I've actually been measuring to make sure that units can get into the trenches. Because if you dig a trench and then you try and put a miniature that has too big a base on it into the trench and it doesn't fit, that's a bit of a shame. So in my case, I've been paying attention to the base sizes just to make sure that I can build a table that the miniatures, can utilize. But in general, you can just change the rules a little bit so that it suits larger models, or just play with the rules as they are with larger models and see how you go. There's no there's no police that's gonna come run and say, slap your fingers saying no, you can't do it. If you have a lot of 1/35th scale models around, why not just try? Mark from Montana says, Alex gaming table project solved the annual what am I going to get my son and daughter-in-law for Christmas, which is great. I like the get everyone in on a game that you all can play together or paint models for or whatever. Is great, Mark. Hello, Adrian. You are thoroughly apologized for your lateness. I did start half an hour earlier than I usually do. My hair looks like I've had a cold for a week too. Oh well. The Fox Mask says, really enjoy your content, by the way. I love the unique approaches and kind of do this myself on minis now as well. Great to hear it. Nick says, hi, just joined the channel recently and love it. I noticed you have an eye for lighting. Yes, my day job is as a photographer and also working with moving pictures. So I kind of can't not pay attention to what the light looks like. But thank you. Hello, Clyde Dashing. I can see that you have opened your wallet. Thank you, Clyde, for the contribution. It says good, appropriate time of the day. Yes, I do try. I mean, I'd probably be able to stream more often if I could stream regular days, like Monday to Friday, during the middle of the day. But the fact is, I stream because I want to have a chat with you guys, and if you guys are at work or haven't woken up yet or whatever, I don't as much see the point in streaming. And yes, long time no chat. I agree. I hope that will change. James says, you're not wrong though. Some people don't put as much effort into the camera work. Yeah. I think, I know it. And so it's easy for me to do. For a lot of people that do content on YouTube, they're actually, very interested and good at what the actual content is about, but working with cameras and things like that is totally new to them. And so obviously I have a head start there. But everyone kind of uses their head starts. It's like there's people that have YouTube channels that have won lots of awards and things like that in miniature painting because they're absolute brilliant painters, and I'm not one of them, and they use their expertise for their channels. So I use my expertise for my channel. It's just the way of things. I don't want to put anyone else down because, I have a lot of gear and like 15 to 20 years of knowledge behind me. So it makes it easy. Spacer says, I'm making a 6x4 foot gaming table. Good luck. I realized that it's a bit of work involved. Loosely Collected says, climb ladders during live stream, falls off ladder, injures himself. Everyone sees it, becomes the fell off the ladder hobby guy. Yeah. I guess, cutting half your finger off with a hobby knife is kind of a possibility as well. Martin Stark says, working, retouching images, but soon I'll finish and get some mini painting done. That's good. I kind of love and hate working with photographs in Photoshop, but yeah. Simon Mann says, hi, trying to paint the details on some old metal Vanguard veterans without ruining the blends I worked so hard for on the armor. Yeah. That's the worst thing when you paint something and it's like, this looks really, really good. Now I just have to spend another, 4 or 5 hours not ruining it. that's a bit of a liberation working on something like this. I can, there's not much I can do to ruin this. I can carve in a big hole in this hill accidentally and go like, whoops, oh, I guess there's a bit of a hole in the hill now. And then just reshape it a bit so it looks like a hill, and it doesn't really matter. But yeah, not quite sure how I'm going to have all these planks. Hello, Cyborg Sloth. I can see a retracted message, but we're welcome. Loosely Collected says, when I first started in miniature gaming, everyone used flat interior acrylic house paint to cover foam. Yeah. I mean, I don't really see the point in using, expensive miniature paints to paint something as large as this. But even just buying, cheaper acrylic art paint, where you get a squeezy tube with lots and lots and lots and lots of paint in there. So it's kind of why I've been thinking a bit about oil paints as well, because I bought a lot of oil paints for painting miniatures, and they come in pretty large tubes, and I'll never ever finish them for painting miniatures. And so even if I half empty the tubes for this, it doesn't matter. It's more the sort of techniques I'm not really sure of. It's such a large piece, so it's easy to get stuck in a mindset that is based on, at least for me, because I'm just used to painting miniatures and dioramas, where details, you paint on the same detail level as how you paint a miniature, but on this it's just a waste of time. And it's like a bigger canvas, so you need to be more dramatic. There's no point in doing like small fiddly details, because it's going to be over there. So it'll be more effective to have like larger strokes and probably use a lot more color than one would expect on like what is effectively an old sea floor. It's just mud and stuff. But so I'm thinking more of how to paint it rather than with what, I guess. And also how to be effective. Like, can I use something as a protective layer, but that also adds color and, Johnny says, I know that brand, Montana, from doing crimes, wall crimes. Yes, I guess this is one of the most used paints / brands for graffiti, which is why one of the reasons why I try and recommend it is like it's really good, high quality paint that it's sold usually in a lot of places if you know where to find it. Like I bought this in a store that is effectively just sells things to graffiti artists. It's cheap because if you paint graffiti, it's not like you can go through quite a few cans before you're done. And there's a massive range of colors. So I don't know how available it is in the US, but in Europe it's fairly common. Jordan says, what level of detail are you bringing the table up to from 1 to 10, where 1 is game store standard and 10 being Necropolis diorama board? Knowing myself, maybe I'll end at 7. I don't know. At some point, I'm going to have to stop myself. Like what I'm doing now is just silly. in a way. If thinking of it in a YouTube kind of sense, I don't know when the last video was out. Was that more than 2 weeks ago? I'm not going to have another video done in a week. Just because I'm getting so stuck into the details and there's so many of them. But I don't know. I'm going to have to settle for some kind of compromise. I guess as well, one of the thoughts I've had is which kind of goes for miniatures as well. It's just that we don't really do it very often. Is you can actually, you can paint it so that you can use it, and then you can, a couple of months later, if you go like, it'd be really nice if this hill was maybe a bit more detailed, you could actually paint that then, with miniatures, you can paint up miniatures to a basic standard, and then after a while, if you go like, it'd be nice if my little kill team just had more detail, some edge highlights, you can paint them on after. Can play with them for a few games and then keep working on them. And I guess in a way the same thing goes for the table. On the other hand, when doing YouTube, it's kind of nice to be like, look at this impressive thing that I did, which usually tends to be stuff that involves a lot of detail. But as I said, I definitely have to have a rethink about what can you actually see, thinking of painting in maybe just a different manner, where there's like what's more effective? Is it more effective to use stronger colors than you normally would? Will that make the board look more wow than if it's all brown, but the brown is really nicely highlighted? You know what I mean? Good evening, WJ Owen, and hello. Whoops, every chat jumped. Hello, Go For It Painting. And Barry Sweaty is not wearing any pants, which is good for you, Barry. Terrain Beast says, best for me was buying some decent gray-black wall primer from a hardware store. Got a can mixed, and it's insane how much you can cover with it. And it seals the foam in so you can spray after. Yeah, so like it's like a wall primer, basically. That's a pretty good idea. Barry also doesn't, apart from not having pants on, says, greetings from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Painting my beast Snagger Stampede whilst watching. Well, welcome, Barry. Lord God says, hello, love the channel. I don't think I've seen a live stream with this kind of production value. What kind of time frame do you expect the table to take to finish? Well, first off, thank you, Lord God. Double D, I haven't really set a time frame. I obviously need to sort of push myself to get this, to get it done, because I want to play games on it, but I also, I don't want to be a YouTube channel that keeps on working on the same table for 6 months. People will be interested at first, and then they will get bored. Can I get it done for Christmas? No. Can I get it done till sort of shortly after Christmas? Maybe. I have been kind of considering, asking for help with the painting bit of it? Can I get some friends in or something to help me paint it, to speed that up? Or will it just annoy me that people don't paint the way I paint? I don't know. But I hope I can get maybe some help there. I did just lose a week, so to speak. My plan was to work on this table for all of the past week, which would have meant that this stage, which is about textures, getting all the different textures on here, would have been done, and I could have done a video on that. But I was away all week for work. And yeah. But I don't know. Hopefully mid-January, maybe? This says the optimist. Depends on how far I take all the details and everything. I think, I mean, the problem, the big problem is I'm enjoying myself. And so that means I get stuck in the details because I enjoy, like I built a little, you can't see it from here, and I can't really move a camera right now, but like I built a little jetty that sticks out from over there, out of these little wooden ice cream thingies. That was like a couple of hours just building this little thing out of wood. And it was so much fun. But it's just that little thing, a little thing right over there, which will just be like, oh, that's nice. And it's probably worth 25 seconds of video time. But I'm at the moment, I'm still at least in the phase of I don't really care. I'm having fun. I'm enjoying myself. My patrons are lovely, so at least for a little while they'll still keep donating some money so that I can actually still sort of pay the bills while I'm building little wooden jetties, and hopefully it'll be done before they realize, like, is that what we paid for? You crazy. By the way, if you're new to the channel and you want to support, then please check out the Patreon. It's honestly kind of what makes me be able to do this as much as I do. And so I'm eternally grateful to my patrons, and I'm very grateful for anyone that considers joining. So please check it out if you feel like you've got a few dollars to spare every month. The Fox Masks app, if you wouldn't do this, what is or would be your biggest dream? By this, do you mean building a 6x4 foot table, or live streaming on a YouTube channel? Juicy Milk says, if you had the opportunity to choose colors for a Pro Acryl signature range, what colors would you choose and why? Oh, that's a very good question, Juicy Milk. I don't know if choosing paints is something I'd be great at. I'm not sure I have that extra. I think it's really interesting to try different paints, to try, from different brands, to try paints that aren't art, that are art paints, not specifically miniature paints, to try oil paints, to try, just try different things, try different brands, see what I like working with and when. But I'm not as hung up on, I'm not as a prolific painter or as hung up on specific colors and shades. There are a few paints, or I guess colors, that I always kind of end up using, whatever I do, just probably because I like the look of them. And I think I've found most of them in the scale 75 range of paints. And so if Pro Acryl would ask me, would you like to have a 52 inches set? That's probably what would be my outlook. Like, well, these are the, 6 paints I tend to always end up using on every single miniature. But some of them are really boring. It's just like, well, I just really like this brown because it looks good on leather. And so if I put it on leather, then it looks like, if I put it on a belt, it looks like leather, and that's why I use it. A lot of those paints are that kind of paints, which would make kind of a boring set because it would all be kind of like a dull brown, a dull blue, whatever. But I don't think there would be any like technical, some people always use specific paints, like they use a icy kind of yellow always just to highlight all the paints, or a Payne's gray blue to darken paints and all of that kind of stuff, which is very useful, but I don't think it would be that kind of a set. And it wouldn't be a, paint goblins set, or whatever. I don't know. It's a good question. I don't think I've ever considered anyone asking me to put together a paint set. But it would probably be, just look back at whatever I've painted the past year and see, well, these 6 paints were in every single paint job. I think that would probably be how I would approach the question. Jake says, I'd love to be able to craft a table like this, but there's unfortunately no space in my tiny house. There's no space in my tiny apartment either. It's not tiny, but it's not big either. It's like a 2-room apartment, two room. There's a kitchen, there's a bedroom, there's a living room. There's also a bathroom. I'm lucky about the bathroom. I hate to do that outdoors. Also kind of cold in the winter. But no, the only reason I'm able to do this is because I have this space that I rent as an office, and where I make the videos. And even here, it's kind of, I don't know where to put it. It was just a silly idea that turned into a fun project. But you're quite right. They're huge. I mean, in theory, the absolute, I think, best solution for having a large gaming table is living in a space that is big enough for you to have like a 6x4 foot dining table. And then you can just put your things on there. And if you really fancy, build or get one of those fancy gaming tables that actually, it goes down and you can put things on top of it and you can just lift them off. And so you can have dinner and then you can play a game and whatever. Because even storing, like, even if you just have like, you call them trestles or whatever, like legs and just a board, just a flat board to put things on that is 6x4 foot. I wouldn't be able to fit that in my apartment either, unless, my apartment would turn into like a gaming man cave, and I kind of don't really want that. WJ Owen asks, you may have answered this, but did you do much planning before starting the project? Just a quick sketch, or have you thought out to plan every detail, or just bringing it? I mean, a combination. There's a sketch. This is the sketch. That would be the right way around for you guys, I think. So this is a sketch I made together with a friend that plays a lot of games. And so we have the mountain, there's the river, there's bunkers, there's a road, you know, all these things that I've then put on the table, sort of in that kind of layout. And I did this together with a friend that plays a lot of Warhammer 40k, plays a lot of bolt action, um, different kind of games, different systems. We also read through the rules for a War Transformed, sort of, to sort of take into consideration what you know, you want to have things that maybe block line of sight. You want to have terrain that gives shelter and places where there's no shelter, and all these different things. And so I think, you know, if you build a completely dedicated board like this is going to be, where there's no movable items, you know, then you want to think that through, because if you build a table where it's like, if you play one side of the table, you're sort of guaranteed to win because you have 4 bunkers and like all these things you can hide behind, and the other side of the table is just flat. Because it looked cool to have like a ruined city on one side and then like a desert on the other. Only when you play it, it's like, well, I don't want to be on that side because there's no cover, you know. So this sketch as well is rather, you know, trying to sort of create 2 equal-ish sides. I'd consider that kind of stuff, definitely. If you have a modular board with modular terrain, you have ruins or houses or whatever that you can just move around between every game, then you don't need to think about it. Then you kind of more need to think about building a table where you can actually put things, you know, i.e. something that is rather flat. But I think it'd be a shame to put a lot of time and effort into making something like this and then it turning out not being very fun to play on. I've also sort of a little bit considered the different sections. There's only 2 pieces now, but I mean, this could be a skirmish gaming table, and the other one could be a skirmish gaming table. And so I've been trying to be like, well, this little side here would be fun to play a game on, you know, this, or whatever. So that there's also these smaller areas that in themselves are still interesting and fun enough to be able to play smaller games on. So I've been considering that kind of stuff, but I've also been going like, wow, this is a cool bunker. I'm going to put this here. You know, as I said earlier, I've kind of missed, there should have been a bit more elevation on other parts of the board. I just kind of forgot. And also the thematic that I've got, that this is an old sea floor. So in theory, the sea is being, you know, it's sort of gone up to here. Only the sea levels have, you know, all the water's gone, and this is now, the old sea floor is actually passable. You can walk on it. There's no water. And so in my mind, it was strange that there would be, I guess, what would have been islands, you know. I was like, this needs to be down here because it's the old sea floor. But there should have been like 2 larger elevations, which is something I've only recently thought about, and I'm going to try and maybe fix it, maybe not. Alison says, working to finish the Gits army, trying to continue to care about mold lines. I'm glad to hear you're doing some hobbying, at least, Alison. Terrain Beast says, also built a 7 by 5 foot Warhammer World style diorama table, and it was the most fun I've ever had. Yeah, I'm very much enjoying it. Wraith something writes, says, I finished a 6 by 4 foot recently in 2 sections and still spent a fortune despite buying only cheap acrylics, and there's no way you can be choosy with paint brands. Yeah. Okay, now I get you. Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm mainly looking into using whatever it is I got. I know I have some artists, like cheap artist acrylics. You buy stuff for your kids to paint with or whatever. Uh, there's watercolors lying around. There's paints that have been sent from me from brands that are paints that I don't use. All this kind of stuff, because it'll swallow a lot of paint. Loosely Collected says, I covered my board with a mix of white glue and craft paint as the base coat. In some cases, I mixed something into them for the texture. Then cheap bottle craft paints over them to build colors. Yeah. Cyborg Sloth says, are you going to 3D print some shells and stuff to make it more seabeddy? I hadn't thought about it, but it's a good idea. I guess they would be absolutely ridiculously tiny. I have been thinking about, anchor, couple of old anchors. Here's an old ship. There's going to be the remnants of a Viking ship somewhere. I printed that. There's also the big ship that I need to build somehow, a sunken ship, but a more modern one. I really would like to have a lot of debris. I haven't really gotten there quite yet, because I imagine, if you're out here on your fishing boat or whatever, or all the things that just end up in the sea, and now it's all visible, so even just junk, any kind of junk. But some kind of crustacean-y stuff would be fun, like sea stars or shells especially. It's just that they're so small. I wonder if I could find if you could 3D print out like a almost like a base, something with already lots of small shells on it that I could just put in there. Because like a small seashell would be, it would have to be the size of a miniature's foot to be able to be visible, and that'd be a really, really big seashell. Hello, Michael Strange. Oh, you jumped. And Bill Making Stuff is here. How are you doing? Sorry, I'm so slow with the chat. Hope you're doing well, Bill. Don't stick it down. Yes, I called Bill. I don't know if for those of you who've seen the video. That was a bit of an edit, but I actually did call Bill, just because I was thinking of just gluing all this into the frame that I built, and I wasn't really sure about that. And I called Bill, and he said, "Don't do it." And so then we kind of redid that bit. But hi, Bill. Oh shit. Okay. Scrolling back in the chat. Where was I? Michael Strange. Yes. Hi, Michael Strange. That's where I was. Hello, Michael Strange. Dreary, rainy, and chilly day here. Perfect for indoor hobby time. Yeah, I'm in Swedish winter, so every hour of the day is perfect hobby time. I think I have quite enough sticks here soon to proceed with my plan. Adrian says feature areas probably look better than an obsessively detailed whole. Yeah, I agree, Adrian. I also kind of want to make, that there's kind of visibly more specific areas. Like, okay, so this is the sandy beach. This is the mountain. That's more of a different kind of a beach, whatever. It might be still green and a bit more like a swamp. and and just have these more specific areas that maybe I mean, I don't know what I'm going to be doing or not, but that might be exaggerated in color or whatever, instead of just ending up doing everything brown and gray, and then you can't then you won't really be able to see the details that are actually there. Loosely Collected says, I wanted to do YouTube videos to chronicle the terrain and board tiles I've been making, but I'm not great with cameras and editing, so I've just been taking whip pics and posting to Instagram. Yeah. And YouTube is a monster that should be feared by all. Stay away. Not really, but it's like, just posting stuff to Instagram sounds really nice. Hello, Salandir. Hope you're doing well. Jamie Mayer says, all over by Christmas has unfortunate Great War echoes anyway. Yes, we can't be done by Christmas. This is a different war. Adrian asks, how was the theater saving? It was good, but I got a cold while doing it, and so it was like my past week has just, it's like a bit of a blur, honestly. Working in a black box, so indoors in a theater room with black walls all days, and then just going to the hotel, sleeping, eating, going back to work, and then doing that from Tuesday to late Friday, and then here I am. It was fun. It was lots of fun. Scott says, I paint miniatures for competition painting, and table seems like an interesting challenge. I reckon that high dynamic value range is good, but also in a way you want it to be like a frame for the minis. Exactly. That's another point. It's like, well, for one thing, I kind of want some kind of a sense of realism going, which is, a bit more dull than how we would paint a miniature or a diorama. Also, as I said, the size is so big. Like, you paint a miniature with high dynamic values, as you put it, so that you can actually see what's going on because it's so small. Whereas here, I can use a different approach. It can be more like, well, this is the mountain. It doesn't. Every single piece of it doesn't have to be super highlighted. It might even actually be distracting when it's so big. And as you said, there's going to be miniatures on it. So how much do you want to take away from the miniatures? In all honesty, I'll probably just start painting it and then see what happens, and then just go with whatever works. I'm not super planning it in my head, but some of these thoughts are there, definitely. Barry Sweetie asks, what's your biggest frustration with the hobby? The fact that so small a thing can take such a huge amount of time, I guess, which is not a frustration. I think that a long time ago, I made a video on it. Which is essentially, we've chosen a hobby that, for most of us, whatever we do, it takes quite a lot of time. It's not like we're doing something that is just done in an evening. Like the hobby isn't to play a game of tennis, and you go and you play tennis, and then you've played your tennis and you're done, and then you go next week and you play your tennis. This is like, I've been painting my army for 2 years and it's still not done yet, which in theory is fine because we're after that. It's the moment that you do it is the moment you're after. You're sitting there painting your little thing, you're in your zone. If we're not talking about gaming here, we're just talking about the painting. And in theory, it shouldn't matter if you're on miniature number 1 or miniature number 50. It's that little moment you're in is the moment you're enjoying. But we have this completion thing. I think mainly because we see a lot of people like myself, who's like releases a video and it's like, okay, so they painted 30 miniatures in the span of 17 minutes. Because that's how long the YouTube video was. And you see the whole process from start to finish, and they're finished, and then they move on to the next project. And then you watch someone else's YouTube channel, they're working on a different kind of project that you also want to do. And then you see pictures on Instagram only of finished miniatures. In theory, there's more unpainted or half-painted miniatures in the world probably than there are painted miniatures, yet we only see the pictures of the painted miniatures mostly. We've built up this completion thing. And so I think myself and probably other people just have a lot of things they just want to get finished, but it takes time to finish it. On the other hand, for my part, I just love this, sitting here making little pieces of wood out of larger pieces of wood that in themselves are actually rather small pieces of wood. But anyway, but tomorrow morning when I walk in here, I'll probably be a little frustrated with the fact that all I did for 2.5 hours was make little pieces of wood and not like finish the bloody table. That's probably one of the frustrations that is actually hobby related. There's quite a lot of other frustrations, but they're more content creator related, which doesn't, it's nothing that should bother you as a viewer, I was going to say. But doing YouTube and stuff like that can be rather frustrating at times. Alison says all the cool kids are on the 52 Miniatures Patreon. This is indeed correct. We have a lovely Discord channel where we hang out and are nice to each other, which is very pleasant. Also, Adrian is there, which is good. Back to the Fox Masks, who asked, "Oh, I meant doing what you do in general. Will join Patreon now to support the gaming table and what brings you joy as well." Well, I'm glad to hear it. The Fox Mask, welcome to the Patreon. I enjoy doing lots of different things. So I enjoy doing the hobby. I enjoy doing YouTube videos. I also enjoy my work, which is photography. And I also kind of do work a bit with music and stuff like that I enjoy. I would enjoy all of them if I had more, all of them more if I had more time to do them all. But I try and do more than one thing. Clyde Dashing says, "Is that Bill making stuff?" I believe it was Bill making stuff. I don't know if Bill is still in, because I kind of replied a bit late. Are you still here, Bill? The people want to know. Pedro asks, "Do some apartments where you live not have indoor bathrooms?" No, they don't. Not anymore. They used to be that way back in the day, a long time before I was born, and even I think most of that disappeared sort of around the time that my parents were born. But you would have apartments, and then you would have the communal shit house, or whatever you want to call it, like an outhouse thing, where everyone went to do their business. But that was quite some time ago. Adrian says, I've been thinking of making some 2x4 gaming table segments based on hardboard sheets. A bit more manageable or storageable, but enough space to stick or feature or two on each one. 2x4, it's a good size. I was, I had all that, a little bit of that in my head. When I set out to do this, my first thought was also like, well, could I do something modular? And just the idea of like getting this board to fit with that board to fit with this, and if I want to raise, then I need two of those pieces so that I can have and my mind just went crazy in trying to figure out how I would do that, and realized that my mind would just be more happy with the fact that I just did something not modular. I'm very impressed by people who make, modular tiles or whatever that also features things like elevation and this and that actually work together, and you can rearrange them in different ways, and that's very cool. Killing You Softly says, Holy Schmidt, I caught one live. Yes, you did. Be nice to it. Anna Karin says, good evening, Alex and everyone, but in Swedish, greetings from West Sweden. Greetings to you as well. Cyborg Celeste says, he who glue it down. Yes. That was miscast Trent's comment. Just glue it down. Jamie Mayers says, how do you find the war transform rules in terms of tricky English word, legibility? I'm not educated, Jamie. Don't use such difficult language, giving the impression it'd be a fun game. Some of the things in the rules kind of confuse me in the same manner as all rules confuse me. There were a few things that I enjoyed that I can't retell exactly, but it was about, one was activation, which I think was going back and forth between different types of units. Don't fact check me now, please. But I think different units were divided into different categories. So say you have infantry and you have elites and you have tanks and you have artillery, for example. And so it would be like, well, your infantry goes, then my infantry goes. But I think you actually roll. Was it that you roll first to see who gets to go? Maybe. But it wasn't just, you do all your things and you do my things. It was back and forth between different styles of troops. I enjoyed the coherency rules, which means like if you have 5 or 10 or 20 or whatever little plastic toy soldiers in a group, how do you need to place them? So in Age of Sigmar, for example, you just need to have like whatever it is, 2 inches or something like that between every miniature in your unit. So you can build like, a long line of miniatures like this just to cover things or whatever. It's like you can't pass here because I've spread all my little miniatures out in a long line. You can't really do that in a war transform. You kind of need to keep them in a little blob, sort of like if you would have them on a movement tray, but not really. So like every miniature needs to be in contact with every other miniature. I enjoy that. It just feels more like if you're running around on a battlefield, you kind of want to be able to hide behind one of your mates so that they get shot first, not just string yourselves out on a long line, What else? There was many more thing. There's more rules on cover than in traditionally sort of things like Age of Sigmar, for example. So you can be sort of slightly standing behind something. You can be in sort of like half cover, or you can be in a trench, which is like full cover, or behind a building or whatever, and it sort of affects the rules. There's also rules for elevation. There's rules that you can't shoot through other people, which in many war games you can just, well, this unit is going to shoot at that unit over there. It's like they're doing a volley, and they can, regardless of what's happening in front of them, they can just choose to shoot wherever they want. In this case, you need sort of line of sight, which kind of makes sense. If you've got a gun and you're shooting in that direction, you won't hit someone, 10 people behind them. You hit whatever is in front of you. So I guess there's a little bit of a tendency to be a bit more realistic. I believe depending on the scenario, there can be random encounters. So all of a sudden it's like, whoops, there's 3 random spawned monsters on the table, I think, which is also fun because all of a sudden you've got like, oh dear, the gods were not happy, and they've just summoned a beast. Who's going to kill the beast? Kind of a thing. These were some of the things I think I can remember that I also kind of enjoy the thought of. Good morning, Ian Latimer, from a warm and sunny New Zealand. Lovely surprise to wake up from to a live stream. Yeah, I believe you. It would be your morning, wouldn't it, in New Zealand? Great to have you. Alison says, Bill making stuff. It was a lovely guest appearance in the last video, but are we really sure it wasn't just Dan doing an impression of you? That's a tricky thing. Who knows? Bill's a bit more grumpy than his brother, so I'm sure it was Bill. Lord God has asked, have you considered the modern shipwreck, RMS Titanic? Now, I believe the Titanic would probably be larger than this entire board if we're kind of going by scale. I think me and Carl had a look at that, and it needs to be, for the size, which is about 60 to 80 centimeters, it needs to be sort of the equivalent of something like a torpedo boat. But we're also in World War I, so I'm not really sure what that would be. But so it still needs to be a fairly small ship. It can't be like a battle cruiser or something like that, because that would be, the length of the board or more. So it still needs to be something fairly discreet. Darren Stone says, a whale skeleton. Yeah, I'm going to have a mammoth skeleton, actually. Whale might be something. Yeah. Clyde says, every time something snips off and flies into the room, you're just adding more texture and realism to the place. Indeed, this is a very textured and realistic place, let me tell you. It's like every time I vacuum in here, it sounds like I just put the vacuum cleaner into my son's Lego container. Hello, The End. How are you doing? Good to see you. D2 Silent Noise says, isn't the board just a big miniature, though? Kind of yes and no. Yes, it's a bigature. Obonium Prism asks, do you recommend making a 6x4 foot board? I was kind of trying to be a little bit funny about it in the video, but the obvious first thing, honestly, is, do you have space for it? Is it going to be practical for you to pull it out and play games on it? That's like the first step. You might come to the conclusion, I have the space, but it needs to be cut up into bits, or you might come to the conclusion that I have the space for it, but to store it, it can just be sheets that aren't too thick, that don't build as much, because then I can put them in this cupboard or whatever. I guess that's probably the boring, realistic place to start. Then I guess you need to consider the investment. I'm trying to work sort of as cheaply as possible. If we don't count the fact that for the 3D printing, I got to try and use a relatively expensive 3D printer. If you already have a 3D printer and want to put 3D things on there, then that's not, necessarily very expensive. And you don't even need to do that. You can just scratch build your own things and whatever, but it's still worth considering the cost. Like, I don't know how much I paid for the wood to build the frame. $300 maybe. I don't know what the XPS sheets cost. $100 maybe. And then there's some cork bark. There's some texture pastes. There's some rock molds. There's, and then you can just start adding and calculating. And then there's the paint and whatever. And in the end, it's like, I don't know, investing in a Warhammer army. Is that maybe the level of it? I don't know. It depends on how many boxed deals there's out there. And so would that be worth it? And then lastly, it's the time to make it. The more complex you make it, the more time it'll take. But you can imagine still that if you can just work on it every now and again, a couple of hours here and there, then you've probably got a project for a year. If all of those things are okay, you have the space, you have an extra $300 or $400. Did I say $2,000? That would have been a lie. It would have been $200 or $300 for the wood. It's calculating Swedish to, I don't know what I said now, calculating Swedish money to dollars. But if you have like an extra $400 or $500, it doesn't have to be. You can look for things in the trash. You can build it out of cheaper materials, but and you're like, well, I'd like to make that investment in time. Then I'd recommend it. If all those things check, Pedro says, I think this was in what do you get frustrated with? Definitely right. Lately, I've had very limited time, and I've been assembling and basing my army's kill teams, and have been falling in love with the hobby all over again. Therapeutic. Yeah, just actually sitting there doing the basing, not thinking too much about where you're going. You're just doing it. Yeah. Lord God says on the same topic, I've been working on this one D&D house for literally years. Just mortared the chimney 1 minute ago. Yeah. I mean, there's always that aspect depending on what it is. If it's like, well, I need all the miniatures to play the game or whatever. I need the terrain to play my D&D campaign. And I guess that's what starts the sort of feeling of being rushed to finish things. Hello, Iron Miniatures. How are you doing? I hope you're doing well. Isophist Chamber says, what about a cross-section of a U-boat so that it's partly on the table? I mean, that's the thing. There can be tons of stuff on this. I don't know how many. There wasn't how excessive the use of submarines was in the First World War. There wasn't as many around, I guess. But I mean, I have on the other half, I have a section that is going to be relatively empty. It's not huge. It's like I don't know what you can see. Yeah, sort of the size of what you can see here, which is just going to be flat. See, look at all my little wooden sticks I built here. Isn't that pretty? So that I can put essentially whatever I want on there. The ship, which is going to be the shipwreck, which is also on the other half, is also going to be something that I can take away. So in theory, there's quite a large area which is adjacent to the other flat area. So in theory, that entire area, which is probably about a fifth of the board, is going to be flat and empty, so that I can put whatever I want on that little bit. If I want, because it doesn't have to be thematic all the way through. If I want to play something that isn't necessarily on the bottom of a sea, it doesn't really matter. I could put ruin buildings, I could put other buildings or houses, anything sort of modular I could put on that little piece, which also creates, in theory, something I could play skirmish games on that has a completely different vibe as well. So, there's options. And so obviously I could put a U-boat in there as well. I could also just put a crashed spaceship, and all of a sudden I can play Stargrave on that little bit, whatever. Hello, TF. How are you doing? Loosely Collected says, you could make some sort of wooden sailing ship that was wrecked. You could have holes on either side to allow models in and out of cover. Yeah, well, I mean, there's going to be a sunken ship, which I kind of wanted to be a bit more modern, but that it will have, you should be able to climb on top of it, because it'd be a rusty heap kind of a thing with just two, like the port and the stern. Is that right? The front and the back of the ship. It's kind of more what will be sticking up like this. But it's also going to be just a big pile of rust because it's been under the ocean for quite some time. And so the thought is you're supposed to be able to climb up it and, do that kind of stuff. I mean, I do have this here is a little wooden ship that is part of this trench system. I don't know how much of it I can do, but I kind of want it to look like a lot of the trench systems that I put in here utilizes the terrain as is. You can't see the other trench over on the other side, but that kind of looks like it's going up into the mountain. So there was like a hill, and they built a trench out from the hill, and this is like a trench, and then they utilized this little sunken wooden ship as part of the trench system. Brilliant Ben Gaming says, I just wanted to say I love the tone, pacing, aesthetic, and narration in your videos. Your videos have always had a cinematic quality to them. Great work. Well, thank you very much, Ben. I appreciate it. Let's see. Nick Hale asks, would you think using magnetic sand to be a good use on a gaming table? I have no idea. My son has some of that stuff. my relationship to it is mainly having to vacuum up all the magnetic sand that didn't go back into the box where the magnetic sand should be when you've finished playing around with it. I mean, I don't really know, because you can shape it and it sort of stays in shape, but then it falls down into a pile of sand. So you obviously could use it to build things that then you can remove, I guess, from time to time. But it's also like, it's just the one color. You know, it's not like you're going to paint it and make it do highlights. And I don't know. Is that the same thing we're talking? Is that, you know, the stuff you can squeeze together into a shape and it stays that shape, and then, or is that kinetic sand? Is magnetic sand something else? Jeremiah M says, not enough foam, needs more foam. Yeah. Loosely Collected says, I cut a lot of cost on my gaming table and board by scavenging and recycling wood and other materials. A lot of it is thrown away, stuff from my job site. Yeah, I mean, definitely. You can check the big skip out the back of your local IKEA and go ask if you can take stuff out of it or whatever. I think for me, it was practical reason to be able to just one day just go somewhere, buy everything I need to build the board, or the, you know, the wooden, you can see it over there, the wooden structure, so that I could go with my dad to just build it, not spend evenings rummaging around looking for trash. It's also nice to be able to do it with materials that people feel when they watch the video that, okay, I can buy an MDF board and some XPS foam, you know, at my hardware store. But I mean, especially, you know, do you really need to use XPS? You know, how much packaging foam isn't there out there that we can use instead? You know, there's lots of ways of making it cheaper by using essentially trash. Shrek asks, do you have a Discord channel? I do have a Discord channel, which is for patrons. So I have a very socialistic patron system. You don't really get any rewards as a patron, because my outlook on things is that, you know, the people that join the patrons do so to support my creations, i.e. the videos I make for YouTube. Having to make extra stuff for patrons means I get less time making YouTube stuff, and so that's a bit of a black hole I don't want to go into. To be able to give some kind of a reward, that reward is the Discord channel, so that, you know, people can chat amongst each other about the hobby or whatever, but also more of a sort of direct link to me. The patron is also, there's different levels, which is just adjusted according to your wallet. So even if you're on the lowest paying tier or highest paying tier, you get exactly the same thing, and that's just access to the Discord channel. I have been contemplating maybe changing that a little bit, but not much. I've been thinking, I don't know if I'm going to do it, but I've been thinking about maybe, you know, say like these live streams could be a little bit shorter in public and extended for patrons or whatever, but it's still like, you know, if I do things, then why not just do it for everyone, and the people that want to support the videos can do that if they want to, you know. I'm not much in the way of trying to entice people into joining the patron based on a reward structure. We have in the past you know, sometimes there's giveaways just because there's things to give away, which is stuff I then exclusively do with patrons, but it doesn't happen very often. AJ says, no, AY says, my first time watching one of your live streams. And oh my God, how do you keep the quality of your videos so good, even in a live stream? It's a color grading thing or a camera. What's your secret? Both of them, I guess. Um, this is the same camera as I film my videos in, and I can put a color grade into the camera so that, you know, whatever you see goes through that filter. Um, there's also lights. So, you know, but yeah, thank you. iSophist says, I've been working on a 2x2 Horus Heresy display board for 18 months. It quickly grew from 25 minutes and a cigarette to 130 minutes and a foam board cigarette. Yeah. I can definitely see how these things grow out of control. I hope you're still in control even though you're doing 130 minutes. Grandpa Jerry says, do you think it's possible to do trenches on a flat top instead of on a flat tabletop? I haven't figured out how to do it yet. In theory, these that I printed out, so these are 3D prints. This is the trench. These are I guess in theory, designed to be able to play on a flat tabletop, because essentially there's just sandbags. I've dug them down, but they work as well just on a flat tabletop. So it's essentially a pile of sandbags. There's some dirt on top, and then there's the sort of classic sort of trench thing with some corrugated sheets of metal or whatever, and some wooden pieces of wood and all of that. So I mean, in theory, you could do a trench, but it's actually, you know, a mound, and then do the feeling of a trench behind it. That mound doesn't have to be sandbags. You could do some kind of a dirt or rock or whatever. So that's one way of doing it. I like this system just because of that, because if I think it adds more visually. You know, I kind of get these sandbags for free. There's also the fact that, you know, if I would have a trench, you know, normally a trench dug in, normally sounds as if this is normal stuff, but, you know, it just goes straight down, and it's supposed to cover you quite a lot, you know. And so it's very difficult to fit a unit of miniatures in there because of, like, usually coherency rules and stuff like that. If you want to be able to fit larger miniatures or larger units, it'd have to be a pretty wide trench. And so then if I would have like these really wide trenches, you know, this wide a trench just dug straight down, it'd look more like a canal or something. Whereas with these sandbags, it's just a bit more flowy. And I kind of like that. As well as I get, you know, that would have been a silly thing to 3D print as well, I guess, because now I get this sort of free sandbag feature going. But yeah, that's a solution. Doing some kind of a mound, if it's sandbags or if it's rocks or whatever it is, and then have like the other end of it is more like a traditional trench. And then just do it to like yay height. You know, it doesn't have to be this. So it's more of something you can take cover behind, not something that, because then you can't, you know, there's not really much point in putting your miniatures in a trench if they can't shoot out of it. That it just mean you're just running around hiding all the time. Because a trench that is really, really deep, you know, you kind of need to go down it and then climb out of it to be able to shoot at the enemy. I mean, these are effectively just cover, you know. there's talk about the kinetic sand. Which is good. Okay, I'm gonna mix up some texture paste. So for this table, I'm going to be using whatever texture pastes I can find that I'm not. I realize that, you know, if you buy texture paste, I get one. So this is one of my favorite. I use it a lot for basing. It's called Summer Ground, and it's by Soilworks, which is the same people that do Scale 75 and stuff like that. This one actually isn't opened, but I've noticed that especially these larger tubs, after not so much time, they kind of start to dry out. And so I have a few different brands, different type of texture paste. They've just been standing around for too long. And so I figured might as well use them on the board. But I mean, the thing is, I don't know the price of this. I guess it's probably maybe a little bit more expensive, but it's 100 mil in one of these. Which, you know, if you want to cover something of this size, I don't know how many of these pots I would need. Quite a lot. And so that's a bit silly. And so instead I found there's a Danish company. They do like cheap crafting stuff and whatever. They sold this modeling paste. This is 250 mil. It was about $2, maybe, rather cheap. When I opened it up the first time, it was like, oh, it smells like texture paste. It's like, you know, it's whatever is in texture paste that binds it all together. Some kind of acrylic binder. There's no sand. There's no texture to it. It's just a paste. And so I've been using this and adding sand to create my own texture paste, because essentially, you know, I can make from sand or whatever mixed with this. I can make enough texture paste to cover the entire table if I would want to, for like $10 or something. And I wouldn't be surprised if this cost $10, you know. So I'm going to mix some up. It just means I don't have to, you know, I can just use however much I want, which is great. So there's this lovely glue. Jamie says the AK pastes I found are really bad for drying out in the pot. Yeah, I think it's a thing. It's like as soon as you open it and you've used it for a little bit, like you've based a squad of miniatures, so there's quite a bit of air has gotten in there. It just really starts to harden fast. So I've got several pots of texture paste that have just dried out to the point of they're not really being usable. Okay, so there's lots. I also found the same company makes essentially Mod Podge. Which is called decoupage glue, which is essentially what Mod Podge is. I can't remember how much this was, but that was the same. It's like less than half the price of Mod Podge, or even less. So that's great, but I'm not going to use that now. But it was just a That's just me talking. So I've got lots of that acrylic binder or acrylic paste, and then I just have this sand, which is actually fancy sand, but it was sent to me by a company called Modularity World, which you can check out. It's a Polish company. They make lots of great, it's more like scale modeling stuff. But it's like a huge tub of sand. And so I figured, oh, well, I might as well just use it. This is really, really fine sand. But, you know, a lot of the time sand is free and you can just go out and get it and sort of have a sieve to get fine and grained stuff. And then some water just to make this a little bit manageable. That's a good sound. I didn't make the fun sound. Okay. Giles says, "Hi Alex, I'm once again just popping in to say hello from Switzerland before getting back to my girls. Good to see you, Giles. Thank you for popping in." Anna Karin says, "Oh, I know that shop, Systrarna Grene." Yes. I'll have to pop in there and have a look. They have a shop in Gothenburg. Yes, it's a Danish company, but they started opening up stores in Sweden pretty recently. They have lots of this kind of stuff, if you just know where to look. They also have a lot of, like, if you just want loads of cheap brushes and stuff like that. Okay. So I've got my goo. I need to take, I've been working ahead of myself. I need to just get some personality into all these little wooden bits, which essentially is chopping them up a little bit. It's great trying to find, if one figures out what's in a hobby product, or something like an acrylic paste, or what is Mod Podge? Can you buy it somewhere else for cheap? I guess in some places Mod Podge is very cheap, but it's not in Sweden. It's very expensive, and so you watch people on YouTube using Mod Podge, and it's like, well, that's I'm not going to buy that. It's too expensive. And in your part of the world, there might be something else that is exactly the same, and you can use that instead. Don't trust YouTubers too much. Felix says, "I want to thank you for your content. Because of you, I have oil color starter set on my desk and a bottle of white spirit, just to see how it will change my way of painting." That's great to hear, Felix. I hope you enjoy it. Pylon says, "Mod Podge is just PVA glue with the resin." Yes, kind of. Jesse Hurd says, "Hi Alex, did you ever play any games with your AOS Ninja Rangers? Do they have any story so far?" I did play a bit. I don't know how many games. 4 or 5 games, maybe. I don't know. Then they changed all the stats with the last AOS update, which was essentially, I don't know, is that more than 2 years? Is next year 3 years? And that means next year there's going to be new rules for AOS, maybe. I don't know. But so the army I put together was essentially pretty crap after they changed the rules. Not crap, but all prices changed quite a lot, and a lot of the units that I used for specific ways, you know, the way of using them changed. And the way of how to build up an army changed drastically. And so then I started building up a new army, which is my owl cast. That army is something I'd like to finish. I haven't. It's been 2 years in the making. It's sort of kind of Roman inspired, I guess. There's a few videos on it. I think there's a playlist for the owl cast on YouTube. But it was a lot of fun playing the Ninja Rangers before the rules changed. And then after the rules changed, I just couldn't, whatever I did, I just always just lost. And that kind of gets to you after a while. So I just felt like, I also really liked all the new miniatures they released, you know, with the most recent Stormcast editions. A lot of the issues I had with Stormcast before that, sort of the male versus female thing and a lot of other stuff. I just really like the new models, and so I want to make a new army with the new models, basically. Ian Latimer says, being a cabinet maker living near a beach, I can easily find cheap basing materials, sand, bark, and all the PVA I can eat. I now need another hobbyist to game with. Yeah, that's always a trick, finding someone to play games with. I mean, definitely finding stuff to build terrain, you know, looking in nature is great, especially things like bark and you know, things like that. And then whatever you find, you can just shove it in the oven for a while. I can't remember. This is things you can Google on the internet to how to sterilize things. You know, you just heat it for a while, making sure you don't get lots of funny little bugs crawling out of your terrain a few months later when they've hatched. It's like, hopefully you're playing a game with like Nurgle or something, and lots of little worms start crawling up to you through the terrain while you play. Would be very, very appropriate. Rubbish says, I finished a rather large force of Stormcast a while ago, mostly the new stuff, chariots and the like. Yeah, the chariots are fun. I think I got a chariot. I just didn't manage to get it into my my list eventually. But I think it's based and primed. I also got some of the just the regular new troops kind of things, and the big, huge fellows. Some of the new heroes and stuff. Rubbish says, sold them to someone who would actually make them see the tabletop more than like once a year, though. Yeah. Yeah, I really want to finish my Age of Sigmar army. But I keep on just starting up new projects all the time. It's kind of like the idea of if I would finish that Stormcast army, I wonder if I ever, you know, I probably wouldn't do a new Age of Sigmar army. Maybe at some point, but it wouldn't be, probably wouldn't be likely to happen in quite some time. And so maybe that's why I'm not really finishing it, because that means I wouldn't maybe paint so much Age of Sigmar. But on the other hand, I'm not painting any Age of Sigmar as is, because I keep starting other projects. So I don't know how big a difference it would mean. there's always that thing when you're doing a YouTube channel is, you know, Warhammer content is just a pretty good thing to stick to if you want views, which, you know, sounds a little boring, but it's also like it's just the way YouTube works. Is like when you get a lot of views, then YouTube recommends it to more people, which means that you might reach more people that would actually be interested in all the other videos you make, you know. So you know, obviously one wants a lot of views because that means a lot more people get introduced to the channel, regardless if they like Warhammer or not. But the fast track to get there is to just do Warhammer content, which is something I'm not very good at, but I do try. Alexander Marquez says, fun little bugs crawling out of the bark on my bases is a feature of my Tyranid army. Yeah. I hope they're not real bugs, though. You'd have to keep feeding them. Like, when you store your miniatures, you need to make sure there's things for the bugs to eat. TF says, I'm reorganizing my hobby space after I had to pack everything up because of some water damage. Isn't so easy. How big's your space? I guess that's one of the things. If I had to pack all this down and pack it up again, it'd be a lot of work. I guess you also realize how many things you have that you don't really use that often. But water damage sounds bad. Was that in a basement or something? Okay, so I'm going to glue these in with my paste, and after that I think this stream will be finished. Okay, let's see. So I've got my lovely paste here, which is, you know what I should do? I should record this for the video. Can I do that? I don't know. Let's try. Yes. Oh, that's shaky. Okay. So this is my homemade texture paste. It's very fine sand. I'm essentially just using this texture paste as a filler, and then I'm going to be using other textures as well. So this is more like filling up. And then, you know, as a second step, I can use more like rocks and stones and other texture pastes, tile, grout, whatever. This is just to build up some elevation and fill very visible cracks and stuff like that. The good thing with this sort of acrylic type paste is that it's sort of relatively flexible, so that when I, you know, store these and move these around and stuff like that, it doesn't necessarily crack or whatever. And this is just to have something to get all the little sticks I made. You can see my lovely line over here to sort of bog down into. And as you can see, I mean, in the end, this is probably, if I would have bought this as a texture paste, this would have been a tub of texture paste. But I can just use however much I want, because it's just not really a huge cost. And I just want to cover all these very unnatural sort of edges from the 3D print. So just blending them into the environment. This stuff obviously shrinks quite a bit, especially since I poured a fair amount of water in there. It's exciting, I hope, to look at. Live goo. TFTF says, lucky for me, nothing of my stuff was damaged. Just had to get everything out before the dryers damaged stuff. Okay, well, that's good to hear. Otherwise, water damage is, the horrible destroyer of many valuable things, like record collections and books in storage and such. Okay, so there's an excessive amount of homemade texture paste. Felix says, I wouldn't go with exciting, but I would consider it informative. That's at least something. There's also like cracks in between these different modular bits of 3D prints that I definitely want to make sure I cover up. But it's going to be like a many stepped process of different textures. This is essentially just the mainly doing the work of filling gaps and altering the terrain into something that would have been difficult to sculpt. When you carve XPS, it's like you always carve it in specific ways. It's great to carve to make like rocks and hills and stuff like that, but it's kind of difficult to do certain things when carving XPS foam. It always turns out, it looks like you've carved it with a knife, basically. Whereas when you have goo like this, for example, I can just make a little more organic sort of shapes. But mainly it's blending in all the printed bits and all the rocks and stones and whatever. Well, the major thing with this is so I can just stick my little wooden pieces into it that I've been carving for the past 2 hours while talking to you lovely people. As I said before, and I will remind you again, Because usually I have a wonderful admin gentleman called Martin. He's great at writing in the chat, of enticing people into supporting by joining the Patreon. I'm not really good at it myself, but I will try and say, please consider joining the Patreon. Because for one, it really helps. And secondly, it's quite noticeable that a lot of people out there are having troubled times when it comes to money. A lot of people are like losing their jobs and whatnot. And so there's a fair bit of, people leaving Patreons because they don't have the money, which I, of course, excessively respect. It just leads to the fact that I get less money as well, which means I need to do other things to pay rent, which means less time making little wooden thingies to put in the goo. I mean, who wouldn't want to support someone making little wooden thingies to put in the goo, right? Okay, we've got some kind of a paste going. I'm not going to put this in my drinking water. I'm going to put it in the other water. And then I'm going to start putting lots of little wooden pieces in here. Kind of like so. It's looking suitably trenchy. Then I should probably start from the other side so I don't get a weird gap in the middle. Or, no, weird gaps in the middle are all right, but just so that I don't use too many of these. And so I guess this is a reason why, for me, building a 6x4 foot gaming table can be a bit of a, time thief. And in the end, I have no idea if this is, when you play a game and you've got all your miniatures and you're worrying about what the dice is saying, will you, notice the fact that someone's been tweezing in little pieces of ice cream sticks into the trench? I don't know. But at least I'll know, and whoever's watched this stream will know. Okay, almost there. Prime time Sunday evening entertainment. How about one over there? Here we are. That's when my question was that exciting? And then no one's really written anything in the chat for about 10 minutes is when you know. No, that was actually pretty boring. Jamie says everyone's in a deep coma. Is it, is it a good or a bad coma? That's the question. Now I kind of just need to make these look like they're not just floating around. Whilst not trying to cover them completely in texture paste. A restful one, says Jamie. As long as it doesn't feel like a chore. I know this is time you can spend on another video, but I think content creators should always stay to stuff they enjoy. Oh, definitely. I mean, I don't know what it's like when you get to a point of actually making money, you know. If you start making decent money out of it, then maybe it's difficult to sticking to things you like if you realize that people aren't watching it. I'm not really there, you know. So, but I'd have a very hard time. I can do the odd thing that I think, you know, well, I'd paint a space marine because then maybe some more people will watch this video. But I also enjoy painting the space marine, so it's not like I'm all of a sudden doing something I don't enjoy. Hello, Nicholas from France. Building an orc battle force at the moment. That's cool. As you can see, squishing down little pieces of wood into an acrylic texture paste. Which is not really as cool as building an orc battle force. But what is a battle force? Is that like one of the boxes you buy? Alison says, also enjoying the company during the mind-numbing boredom of mold line removal. Yes. That's good, Alison. How many goblins to go? Maybe I shouldn't ask. Maybe that just triggers the thing we were talking about before, completion syndrome. Okay, so this is looking all right. I mean, this stuff hardens sort of like a rock with a bit of flexibility to it. So once this is dry, I can always go in and rub some kind of other texture on top of it. I just want to make sure it kind of looks like they're stuck in the mud, but also are still sort of visible. All done now, yeah. Good one, Alison. Mold lines, that's one of the other things that I saw, I kind of don't like it very much most of the time. And then some days it's just when you're not really sure of what to paint, you don't really feel like painting something because it's a step you don't really feel like you want to do it or whatever. Um, but you still want to kind of just sit and do some kind of hobby thing. That's a few of the that's one of the times when removing mold lines can actually be nice. It doesn't happen very often, uh, but most of the time I absolutely detest mold lines. Okay, I think I'm almost done. We can now consider the fact that this is trench 1 of 3. Yeah. And so I just have to kind of tell myself that this is going to be one fine table when it's done. And hopefully whoever plays it will just stand there and go, wow, that goo and the sticks in the trench, that's just amaze balls. And not say, how come the wooden planking on the 3D prints looks so nice, but all the wood on the other bits looks kind of like just ice cream sticks stuck in goo. Oh, I missed some bits down here. Then I'm done. Andy Moran says, hello there. Love your stuff. Very entertaining. I'm glad to hear it, Andy. At the moment, I'm not at my most formidable, entertaining place. But I figured if I do live streams where I actually get to do something, not just talk, then the chances of doing live streams is going to be vastly higher. And so that means also having to look at me or listen to me concentrating while trying to talk, which is usually kind of difficult. All right, I think that needs to be it. I'm back. I need to turn this camera off because it's recording. Now it's stopped recording. And that was a trench. I think I should just leave it now, or I could sit here for another 2 hours fiddling with this stuff. hopefully when I come in tomorrow morning, these will be stuck in place. It's a bit of an experiment as well, but this glue should be enough to just hold these sticks down. Cool. Okay. Felix says, I started the hobby this year. My plan for early next year is a Rhino kit bash. I got the Orc Turk models for parts. Cool. Sounds like a good thing. AJ says, yay, only 128,383 trenches to go. Kind of. That's a little bit what I've turned this project into. But as I said, I'm enjoying it. All right, good folks. Thank you all for joining in. It's been a pleasure. I haven't live streamed in a while, and it was great to do so again and just have a chat with you. Hopefully I'll be able to get into doing this more regularly. As always, I'm no good at scheduling things. It just doesn't work with my life force. So they're always kind of random. They just pop up a few hours beforehand, going, okay, he's going live soon. But I'm glad so many joined in, and I hope the continuation of your Sunday will be lovely. Thanks all. Bye.